Hi, everybody. Welcome to Breaking Bread, October 16th today. Had a few snafus getting online. Glad to see you guys were patient and stayed with me, and nobody abandoned ship, although some of you were probably tempted. Let's see, I even got Steve in there. That's awesome. I thought I lost Steve for good, but I see him on there. We have a couple of standing prayer requests. We'd just like to go over those with you as you pray for these this week. Uh, just remember the Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene victims, the people who have been displaced, both from their homes or have had their property damaged, or in the case of Dana and Kathy's kid, his job. So we just want to lift up and remember this is going to be a long-term prayer request because this is some of that damage that was done in Western North Carolina is not going to be fixed in a matter of weeks or months, but rather quarters or years. So we'll need to continue to lift those people up. And then also that this thing that's come into their life will show them that they're not in total control like they thought they were, and perhaps open the door to some of those ministries that are in there, like Samaritan's Purse and others that not only minister to their physical needs, but also are in there sharing the gospel, sharing the good news to these people who need to hear some good news. Welcome back, Donna. Everybody is doing good. I appreciate seeing everybody here. We need to remember Dan, if you would please, this week, that there would be some favor in his search for a job. My buddy Tim goes in next week for a consult with the surgeon about getting his plumbing reconnected. So if you could remember my buddy Tim, and hopefully we'll get him all the way through from the initial cancer diagnosis, which was right around Christmas of last year, to being good to go in less than a year. And I just want to thank you for you guys' faithfulness and praying for Tim. And also, I don't have any new updates on my buddy Jim, who's got blood cancer. I've got a friend who's going out with his son-in-law, and I will get more updates on that if they become available next week. We've got the goal, again, for those of you who were not here last week during the introduction, I would strongly encourage you, not that I'm trying to increase my YouTube viewers' views, but please watch the introduction of Proverbs. It's going to help you immeasurably as we go through this study, and it will save me a lot of having to repeat everything 2 or 3 times as we go through the study. I told you there would be a couple of things I would repeat because they're important to be reminded of, but in general, you will do yourself a big favor if you watch those Proverbs intro videos. With that being said, and because his wife is sitting next to him, live from Melbourne, Florida, if Dana would open us up this afternoon in a prayer before we get started with our study today.
We'd be glad to. Heavenly Father, even through all that we're going through, all the ebbs and flows of life, things go up, things go down. Lord, you're with us, and we're so grateful. So grateful for the friends and the body of Christ. We're in this together. We're not alone. So, Lord, we just want to thank you that you're with us.
Thank you, Father. And if you guys remember, it's not going to be on the recording. Also, Dana had that prayer request beforehand. I just ask you to lift that up this week, and it's somewhat urgent. So please remember that prayer request as well. Go with me now to Proverbs, the book, and chapter 1.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just say hello to everybody because it was so frantic trying to get on and get the sound fixed and my internet up and running. Hello, everybody. I won't give you your individual hellos, but glad you hung in there. Go ahead and mute yourselves now, and we will start. We will be able to finish Proverbs 1 today, no problem. I only say that because I know how many pages of notes I have. So now, one of the things that I said I'll mention pretty much every week is that Proverbs are meant to be general instructions for us how to live a wise life before God. If you wanted just kind of a summary statement of the entire book, it's primarily written by Solomon, and the point was trying to give instructions to us how to live this life of wisdom, walking hand in hand with God. You can't have one without the other. And Proverbs themselves are these short little pithy statements that are made to give you pause, made you to think, and they are not absolutes. I've been mistaught Proverbs so many times over my life. It just goes, and this is one thing I will repeat every week, is these are general rules for living. They do not apply in every circumstance. They do not apply, but you're going to do yourself an enormous favor if you apply these rules to your life. And God's not saying that these can be used without exception. And so that's how people will do, well, Proverbs 22, whatever says, and they quote it. And it's like, yeah, well, you don't understand the book of Proverbs. You don't even know what a proverb is. So as I used in the example last week, we have proverbs, sayings, early to bed, early to rise, makes a person healthy, wealthy, and wise. And I'm sure you can think of literally dozens of examples of people who've gotten up early, gone to bed early, who are sick, who are poor, and not very sharp. So, these are not absolutes. They're general sayings that are applicable to us. And Solomon is doing us a favor in letting us peek into his book of Proverbs. Now, one of the things that we're going to run across today multiple times is if you haven't noticed, you will notice, and that is the irony of the book of Proverbs. Now, before I start with Proverbs 1, how many people on the broadcast today have read through the book of Ecclesiastes? Can I see? It may be years ago, but how many of you read Ecclesiastes? Okay. Ecclesiastes is interesting in that it reveals the writer is the same writer here. It's an autobiographical book written by Solomon late in his life. And the book is almost a recording of his failures. So the irony is, here's the wisest man other than Jesus who's ever walked the face of the earth. And he ended up breaking most of his proverbs later in life. We're going to go through some of those that he obviously broke later in his life. And I just find that's somehow just massively ironic. It just sets it up that Solomon is not perfect. He's still a human being. He's still capable of having great pearls of wisdom and yet not necessarily always applying them in his life. So let's go to Proverbs. I'm going to read you 1 through 6, verses 1 through 6 out of the New King James Version. I'm going to try to get the cadence correct. The purpose of the book of Proverbs. Here's the announcement. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom and justice and judgment and equity. Pause. To give prudence to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. Pause. A wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. Pause. To understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles. So if I got the phrasing and the pauses correctly, this opening first 6 verses tells you what the purpose of the book is. To know wisdom and instruction. In the opening of his collection, Solomon tells us the purposes that he's seeking to attain in writing these words or these sayings of wisdom. They're intended to give you, the attentive reader, wisdom, instruction, perception, and understanding. Okay? You're going to have to think about some of these things as he says them. The purpose is to know wisdom. Now, I think it's fairly easy to say. How many of you like to read articles about, well, let me just back up. How many of you have, within the last 6 months, used some form of AI, Chat GPT, Copilot, Google's Gemini? How many of you have used some form of online AI tool? Okay. Well, y'all aren't as savvy as I thought. All right. So just kidding. Today, we are living literally in the information age. It's not a stretch to say that. But I would say, and you can obviously take exception to this saying, but I don't believe we're living necessarily, though, in the age of wisdom. It's probably a safe bet to say that most people today are more interested in information than they are wisdom. They're interested in making money. They're interested in having a good time. They may be interested in learning something or in getting a good education. They're interested in being well liked. How many likes do I get? How many people are following me in my feed? Blah, blah, blah. But wisdom, the pursuit of wisdom currently in our culture is not a popular ideal. That's what this book is about. Now, it's helpful to remember from the intro, what is the difference between wisdom and knowledge? One can have knowledge and actually have no wisdom. So the two are not synonymous. Knowledge is merely the collection of facts, but wisdom is the right use of what we know for daily godly living. So it's using what you know and using it in the right way. Knowledge can tell you how a financial system works, but wisdom helps you manage your budget wisely. Do you understand the difference? You can have head knowledge, you can have facts, but to actually put them into application, that's wisdom. Solomon has two kind of audiences that he's going to be dealing with as we walk through the Proverbs. Now, chapter 1 is a lot of rehashing some of the stuff I did in the intro last week. His two audience members, and it says here to give prudence to the simple. Now, again, that's a translation difficulty. I think there's a better word than simple, because when we think of somebody as simple-minded, it's usually meant in a derogatory sense. In the Greek, that word means more closely to what we would use naive. It's to give instruction to the naive. So the wisdom of this book will make the young or inexperienced person know what to do and how to do it in life. It's an instructional book to the naive. It will give the young person knowledge. It will give them discretion. And I liked, and I'm just quoting you somebody here. I'm not hurling insults, but I think this is a true statement. I think that a simple person, I think even somebody who might be considered the village idiot, who is a sound Christian, has much greater wisdom than the most profound genius who's an unbeliever. Because as we studied last week, knowledge without godly wisdom is useless. It will take you down the wrong road, further than you want to go, longer than you ever thought you would spend, and take you to places you never wanted to be. And that's knowledge can do that, but wisdom will help you steer a right course. Now, there's a second audience. The first one is, okay, it's for the naive. Well, I'm old and I'm not naive. I've been around for a while. I've learned through the school of hard knocks. Well, there's a second group of people that Proverbs is for, and he tells you a wise man. A wise man will hear these Proverbs and increase learning, Solomon says. The book of Proverbs is not just for the naive and inexperienced, because even a wise man will find much help here to guide him if he will just listen. So even a man of great understanding can learn from this book of Proverbs. And he says, finally, it's to help you understand enigmas. It's riddles. It's to help you discern and understand you're familiar with the phrase, the mysteries of life, the enigmas, the riddles of life. Solomon says, listen to what I've got to say, and I'll help you discover the keys to some of these riddles, to some of these enigmas. That brings us to your first application for today. We always, no matter where you are in life, whether you're the young naive or the grizzled old veteran, we always need to be learning at the feet of God. There's always things. Now, some of you guys have read through the Bible and you've studied through the Bible with me for over 2 decades. And this is what Breaking Bread is about. We pray, but we're not really a prayer ministry. We do help each other out, but we're not a ministry of helps. We're not even necessarily an evangelistic outreach, although some of you have already mentioned that you got saved through this Breaking Bread ministry. What our main focus is exactly what Solomon's talking about. We're sitting at the feet of God and we're learning from his word. And we do this week in and week out. We do it verse by verse, and we do it through the whole Bible, both New and Old Testament. And we've done it for decades. That is my main focus. That's what I've always tried to keep the main focus of Breaking Bread to be. The Lord is committed to instructing us listeners, and making sure that we grow. Now, how we use this guidance and how the growth takes place, listen to me, is entirely up to you. You can either be instructed and guided by the school of hard knocks, or you can learn by studying the word. You can learn in the storm, or you can learn in the schoolhouse. You can learn in a crisis, or you can learn in the classroom. Now, most of us, frankly, have had experiences learning both ways, but I think everybody on this broadcast can agree that learning in the classroom is far superior than having to learn through some horrible experience we go through. You would rather benefit from somebody else's school of hard knocks than have to go through it yourself. They both teach us, no doubt, but one comes at a much greater cost to us personally. So I think the best way is to learn the way Solomon's trying to teach us and not go through that school of hard knocks. Go with me to verse 7. Verse 7, as I indicated in the intro, is your chief verse for the entire book. And Solomon lays it all out before he starts throwing Proverbs at you. He says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now, I had a great question this week. I actually had several, like 3 or 4 great questions this week from people who emailed me from the YouTube channel. And one of them wanted me to explain the fear of the Lord, because that is a phrase that, again, doesn't necessarily translate well into English. The fear of the Lord is not this cowering, begging fear of God. That isn't what's trying to be transmitted in the original Greek word for fear. It's a better application, and I think it would be helpful if we inserted the words respect, awe, reverence, This is the imagery that word fear is trying to transmit to us, that it's this proper reverence that the created us has for the creator, or that the redeemed us owes to the redeemer. It's proper respect and honoring of God. That's what the fear of God means. God should be regarded with reverence and awe. And this proper attitude of the creature to the creator is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom can't advance any further until this is your starting point. Solomon makes that absolutely crystal clear. All you're doing is accumulating knowledge, because all your life, if you reject God and you reject him and you don't honor and revere him, then what's going to happen to you when you die? This all becomes for naught. This was all pointless. I don't care what type of advanced degrees that you've earned, you have no eternal good left. It's all over. So true wisdom cannot be attained. Listen to me, cannot be attained by human efforts, by human energy, by human ingenuity. Now, those are all gifts that we can use in God's service, but you can't separate out God from the gifts, or else the gifts become useless. The fear of the Lord is essential for obtaining wisdom. The right relationship that you have with them is the key to wisdom. Brings us to our next lesson, our next application. One, and again, I don't mean any offense here, but I think I'll just watch if I see any heads nod. One of the most annoying type of people, and it's okay to be annoyed, it's just what you do with that annoyance, but one of the most annoying types of people for me is the know-it-all. The person who has already a preformed opinion about something, or pretty much everything. They're closed off to anything new, or anything new that represents new information. They resent being corrected or disciplined in their viewpoints. A know-it-all is someone who kind of, in essence, refuses to learn.
You will not do
Solomon has a word for this person, the know-it-all. He calls them a fool. He said, don't be that person. Don't be a fool. Be open to learning. Be open to the advice of others, especially people who know you well, and godly people who can offer invaluable insight and counsel to you. Don't be closed-minded to that. Don't be closed-minded to the Proverbs. Learn how to learn from others. And to do that, you need to use these two and close this one more often. You're going to get yourself much further down the road if you learn to do that. Only God knows it all. Your buddy down the street, trust me, does not know it all. Okay? Only God knows it all. Go with me to verses 8 and 9. Now, Solomon starts the actual Proverbs section, and he addresses as if he's talking to his son. Now, one clarification before we get on there for Rachel and Kathy and Donna and all the ladies who watch this on YouTube later. The word son, again, it's kind of a transliteration. In Greek, it just means your child. There's no gender specificity to this word. So it doesn't mean a male child. It means any child. But I didn't write it. I just have to read it the way the New King James translate it. But it's interesting when you look at the original word, it doesn't mean specifically just son. My son, hear the instructions of your father, and do not forsake the law of your mother, for they will be a graceful ornament on your head and a chain about your neck. Now, for those of you who immediately went to the wrong place, the chain is not like a chain. The chain is, again, more accurately translated a necklace. So a beautiful crown or tiara on your head and a beautiful necklace. If you listen to the words, to the instructions of your parents. Now, this is kind of this warm, fuzzy scene that Solomon paints for us. You can imagine him literally sitting around with one of his kids, talking to them in a very loving, fatherly way, saying, listen to me and listen to your mom. We know what we're talking about. We've been through a lot of stuff, and we can save you a lot of grief if you will just listen to us. One of the two things that I get out of this, number one, and we talked about this last week, our culture, many of us have just completely displaced the responsibility of teaching our children wisdom, and we put that off on the schools, and we put that off onto their Sunday school teachers if they even go to church. The ultimate responsibility of teaching wisdom to your children is not the school system. It's you. It's the parents. And I love the fact that it indicates both parents. The second point I wanted to make is a cultural point. If you look at, and I said wisdom literature of the type that that Proverbs falls into, most ancient cultures had reams of wisdom literature. The Egyptians, and I mentioned several cultures, but it was extremely rare to look in any other form of wisdom literature from any other culture, and they even mention women. I mean, in many of them, women were treated like more like you were part of the livestock herd. That was the era. But in Jewish thought, I think it's really interesting to see women are viewed in many respects as equal. And by the time as Christianity rolls on and you get quotes like out of Galatians, it doesn't matter whether you're Jew, Gentile, slave, free, woman, man, whatever race, all people are equal before the sight of God. This is revolutionary thinking. People in 900 BC or 33 AD did not think that way. This was not common thinking, and Christianity turned the culture upside down on its head when it said, nope, all people, regardless, all people are equal in the sight of God. So here we have both parents being lifted up in the elevation and status of teachers. And if you'll listen to your teachers and take their words to heart and apply them to yourself, it'll be like a tiara or a beautiful gold necklace chain, something of honor that you wear on yourself. Such will be these pearls of wisdom that Solomon is going to place before us. Go to verse 10 through 14. Here's his first pearl of wisdom. My son, again, word means nothing gender specific. My children, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait to shed blood. Let us lurk secretly for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol and whole like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all kinds of precious possessions. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in your lot among us. Let us all have one purse. So the first thing Solomon tells his kids is sinners are going to entice you. He's telling them, listen, there's a real danger about the company that you keep. Now, listen, all people are sinners. Will we agree with that? Except for Jesus Christ, even Solomon himself. Everybody is a sinner. But it is clear God gave you a noodle and some gray matter between your ears to think with and some discernment. And some people are clearly more trouble than others. Now, if one, let's say, who can I pick on? Who has a daughter? Somebody raise their hand that has a daughter. All right, Ron was first up. Ron, a few decades ago, your daughter, Daddy, this boy's coming over to meet you, and he's going to take me out on a date. And he comes up and now listen, tattoos are real popular nowadays. But back then, okay, he pulls up on a Harley with a huge sissy bar and rumbles up to the driveway. He's dressed head to toe in leather, except for his chest, which is completely open to the wind, and there's bugs splattered in there. And he has tattoos forward and back. He greets you with this litany of swear words, and you were in the Navy and you've never even heard half of these words. And he says, I'm here to take your daughter out for a good time. Now, how is that going to strike Ron as a dad? I think Ron is going to begin cleaning his 12-gauge Winchester at that moment as a means of communication to this person. Guys, you know what I'm talking about. Common sense. Some people, all of us are sinners, but there's just crowds that you don't want your kids to run with. And this is what Solomon is saying. The young have to resist the enticement of these type of people. Now remember, Proverbs is not a book of theology. Proverbs is not an evangelistic book. Proverbs isn't about reaching the lost. There are plenty of other books that do that in the Bible. Proverbs is just talking to you as a believer and how to navigate your life with other people. Psalms tells us how to get along with God. Proverbs tells us how to get along with people. And the first advice he gives you is watch out for the company you keep. So that's our first lesson, our first instruction. You have to be careful with the friendships that you make. There's a lot of powerful forces and influences on your life, and a lot of those come from the friends that you keep. There's an old saying that says, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So as God's people, we need to be careful now we're to go out and minister to the world. You guys do get that, right? If you think that we're a 55 plus community, a little Christian enclave, we never go outside our gated community, you miss the point. But we are to be in the world, but not of the world. Your friendships and your tightest people around you should be believers. They should be there to pray for you, to lift you up, to call you out when you're doing something stupid. Your circle, your close circle of friends, your closest friends should be believers. Now from there, you can go out and now, yes, you go out and minister to the world. But Solomon gives you a very good warning here that you really need to listen to. If you keep the wrong company, you will probably be swayed. Now, this company that he's warning his kids, they want to go out and commit murder and rob people and profit from the money and so forth. And he said, listen, kid, whatever you do, distance yourself for those kind of people. Part of the enticement, which we're all subject to, part of that enticement was belonging, especially with teenagers. They want to belong, but we're social creatures. We all want to belong. And so sometimes we fall into the wrong crowd just because we want to fit in and belong to a group. And Solomon's going, There's some groups that aren't worth belonging to. Hang out with other believers. Hang out. Your core group should be other people who walk in the wisdom of God. All right, we're coming up on our break. Hopefully, I won't have any reconnection problems. We'll sign out if you guys get back on in the next 30 or 60 seconds. I know we're going to run longer than normal today, just simply because it took me 20 minutes to get on, but I will see you back here in about a minute.